What an exciting day we have today. Joyous experience here these last 10 years. Happy to be here this evening with everyone on the call today. I just want to welcome everybody to our 10-year anniversary virtual summit. Next slide. My name is Sarah Fuentes, Vice Chairwoman. I have been a member of this organization for 10 years, been serving on the board as a volunteer for 9, and have been vice chair for 4, and it's been an amazing journey. So much fun. Through this journey, I've co-founded my company, Smart Waste, and excited to be here today representing the waste and recycling industry. Next slide. Here is a preview of this wonderful event that we are putting on tonight. I just have to say that it means so much to us to have everyone dialing in from wherever you're calling in today. We appreciate you and we celebrate you today, and we're interested in what you have to share. We're going to have an executive panel moderated by my good friend, Lisa Ann Pinkerton, which I'm going to introduce shortly, and a keynote speaker today by Microsoft. We're going to have a networking breakout session, youth climate panel leadership. This is amazing, raising up the youth. We're going to have a musical performance, an amazing ideathon, and then we're going to close out the ceremonies sometime between 7:50 and 8 o'clock. Next slide. So just a little bit about Women in Cleantech and Sustainability. We've been around now for 10 years. This is what we're doing tonight, celebrating our 10-year anniversary. It's such an amazing and exciting day today to be here with my friends. This is something that not only do we influence women in the green economy, but also we've developed an entrepreneurship program, TED style like a WCS conference, a pitch competition, and the ideas we're hoping today that we can see transform in the next 10 years. Who knows, we might get that in the pot today. We'll see though how that goes. Next slide. We have put in a lot of work into building relationships over these last 10 years. And this slide right here depicts that. We have, we just want to say thank you again to our sustainability champion sponsor, Microsoft, our Youth Angel sponsors, Snowball Printing. Hey, Jenny, hope you're out there, girl. And our partnership organizations, Presidio and Virtue Labs, and our media partner, Canary Media. We have an amazing community of cross-promotion partners that our committees have reached out to, that we've worked with over the last 10 years. And there's so many on here, but just we're going to give an opportunity for you guys to connect with them in the virtual world as well. And I just want to give a quick shout out to all of our cross-promotion partners. Thank you so much for all of your support and helping us build this community. And let's continue to go on this journey in the next 10 years to see what we can make happen and join the decade of action, ladies and gentlemen. Next slide. We've been now in the virtual world, and I don't want to dive too much into Zoom etiquette, but here at WCS, the culture is we want to see your face. We want to be able to connect with you. We will, try to connect with you on LinkedIn. So please be prepared to share and connect and set up, meetings with people or coffee. Come today with an open mind, and please, we want to hear your ideas today during our ideathon. Next slide. So today we're going to have a wonderful executive panel, and I believe this is my opportunity to introduce my good friend, Lisa Ann Pinkerton. And I just real quick, Lisa Ann, when I first met Lisa, Lisa Ann was giving a speech on how to be a powerhouse networker. And one of the tips that she gave me over 10 years ago was to show up early and meet the speaker. And in the virtual world, how you do that in WCS is by volunteering. And so we have an amazing panel, and all of our volunteers have already had the opportunity to meet some of these amazing speakers that we have today. And this is the thing that I love about WCS is that you're going to get tips and tricks that are going to take you to the next level in your career. And I have to say that having a mentor and a friend like Lisa has really helped me in my career. And I just want to thank you, Lisa, for being a great example, a great friend, and being fearless in wanting to start something new. And we chatted about this in our 10-year anniversary video. So Lisa Ann, I just want to thank you, and I have the privilege of presenting today the founder and chairwoman of Women in Cleantech and Sustainability, a former NPR reporter, the founder of Technica Communications, one of my dear friends, Lisa Ann Pinkerton. Thank you so much, and I'll turn the mic over to you.
Oh, thank you, Sarah, for that warm introduction and all of the wonderful words you said about the whole organization. I mean, you're right. And we all learn from each other, right? I've learned from you to speak what you want. And if you say it and put it into the universe, it will show up for you. Might not be right away, might be 3 months, might be 6 months, but it does happen as long as you can speak and in to put out that intention of what you would like in your world. And I've learned that from you. So thank you, Sarah, for teaching me and teaching everybody here that universal truth about our collective reality. I'm not going to get too, okay, I'm going to get emotional. I don't want to get emotional. So, but I do want to quickly say to everybody on the call, thank you so much for joining us today. Women in Cleantech and Sustainability is your community, and you showed up here with us to celebrate 10 years. 10 years ago, we were having happy hours and random fireside chats, and 15 people would show up, right? But we kept doing it. We kept at it. And 10 years later, we're an international organization with companies like Microsoft sponsoring us. And it's not hard to believe, quote unquote, but to me it's to bear witness to it, because Women in Cleantech and Sustainability is one of my children, and it's just really awe-inspiring to watch her grow up and become sort of independent, right? And have all of these different people working within her to accelerate the influence and the change that we are looking to have in this world. As we all know, the next 10 years are probably going to be arguably the most important 10 years for the planet, for us as human beings, as earthlings. And it's our personal belief here at Women in Cleantech and Sustainability that women have a unique a role, and to really turn the tide, to create a world that we want, and one that is supportive and sustainable for all, not just for some. And so I really feel honored that you've all joined us here today, because yes, we're here to celebrate 10 years, and we are also here to celebrate the next 10 years and all of the wonderful things that will come about from this organization and the community that it holds. The 5,000 or more people that are involved in this organization in some way. We all have a role to play in the next 10 years, and we all get a chance to do it together. So thank you all for being with us today. I have the pleasure of introducing and moderating this panel. So I'm going to introduce you to our speakers in no particular order. We have Lauren Phipps. She is the Vice President and Senior Analyst of the Circular Economy for the Greenbiz Group. And 5 years ago, she started at the Greenbiz Group as a business development associate. She worked herself up the ranks. Prior to that, she taught science at Pitzer College, and she also sits on the board of the Ocean Plastics Leadership Network. We welcome Lauren. And also we have Sue Yang. She's an investment director with the Next Generation Infrastructure team and at Antin Infrastructure Partners, which is an international infrastructure private equity firm with over $20 billion in capital. And prior to that, she was vice president at Oron Energy Partners and held positions at Macquarie Group and McKinsey and Company. I apologize if I mispronounced that one, Sue. You can let me know. She also holds a BA from Columbia College and an MBA from Harvard Business School. We welcome you, Sue. Also, I want to point out that Sue has been instrumental in setting up many of our venture capital, startup, and investment entrepreneur events over the past couple of years. If you've attended any of those, we had a sort of a meet and greet with a bunch of VCs, over 100 people in attendance. It was very impressive, and all of that is due to Sue's work. So thank you, Sue. Next, we have Dr. Katrina Knauer, and she is a polymer scientist who's dedicated her scientific career to solving the plastic waste problem, a very big problem we all have here on our planet Earth. She has a PhD in polymer science and engineering from the University of Southern Mississippi, and her research is focused on advancing recycling technologies, and this led her to leading the material innovation R&D team at Novaloop, which is formerly Bio Collection, and it's a chemical recycling startup. And also, she recently joined the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, NREL, and the Bottle Consortium. And in that capacity, she's developing sustainable technologies to chemically upcycle today's plastic waste streams and develop new plastics for the future of recycling, new plastics for the future that are recyclable by design. So welcome, Kat. And yeah, you can spotlight us all and you can remove the slides so that we can start seeing everybody's lovely faces. And then, oh no, I lost my script, hold on. Next, we have Jessica Jane Robinson, and she's the CEO and founder of Resilience Birthright. She's a zero waste practitioner and environmental leader who specializes in launching environmental pilot programs that target cultural and social behavior changes needed to address climate change and planetary damage. She has presented at the United Nations, and she's also a climate leader in Al Gore's Climate Reality Project. She also serves as she's also serving as vice president to the board of directors for the Northern California Recycling Association. Welcome, ladies, to the panel. Everybody there, make sure you're not on mute so that we can start our discussion. So yeah, we've said, you know, this is the decade of action. The next 10 years are pivotal for our planet. And the IPCC report bears this out. You know, it used to be that, yes, we know climate change is happening. Most likely humans are the cause of it. Now it's definitely humans are the cause of it. It's definitely happening. The ice sheets will melt. Weather systems will become more erratic. The temperatures will rise, et cetera, et cetera. So my first question for all of you is, what are you or your organizations doing to join this decade of action? And Katrina, you mentioned you wanted to start, so I'll throw the floor to you. What are you doing?
Great. Yeah, thank you, Lisa, for the introduction, and thank you all for having me here. I'm incredibly honored to be on the panel alongside the other incredible panelists. And I think the reason I wanted to kind of start this off is because of the fact that in the next decade, I do think, besides the obvious action items that we all have and switching to renewable energy and lowering our greenhouse gas emissions through those avenues, and I work at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, but I also think we'll see a paradigm shift into the chemical industry and decarbonizing that industry in an effect to mitigate climate change, especially in plastic production, which currently accounts for, I think, 6% of the total fossil fuel consumptions in the world, and is projected to reach 20% of total fossil fuel consumption by 2050, which is an astronomical amount to be going into plastics. So what we're doing at my organization within NREL and within the Bottle Consortium is identifying low energy pathways to keep those carbons circular. Once we take it out of the ground, we don't need to ever do that again. And that's, I mean, ideal pie in the sky. But I do think that this next decade will see that paradigm shift where we're not just developing renewable energy, which is so critically important, but we're also targeting the chemical infrastructure within the US and the globe to bring in a circular economy to that as well, and bring in low energy pathways to keep those carbons circular. And I'm excited to be a part of that next decade with all of you.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And how about you, Lauren?
Sure. Well, I am so humbled to be on this panel as well. So thank you for the invitation. I deeply believe that relationships are the basic building block of systems change. You need communities of practice to advance meaningful action, especially when we're doing things that are really complicated and hard and haven't been done before. So Greenbiz is a media and events company that focuses on defining and accelerating markets within the clean economy broadly, and really focused on how do we build those communities. Specifically, I focus on building out the community of practitioners trying to advance the transition to a circular economy. I write and I put on a big event on the topic called Circularity, but really it's about bringing together the right people, whether it's across industries, across roles, across value chains, to make sure that you're talking to the talk to each other, aligned in action, and all sort of going the same direction to the next 10 years and beyond.
Thank you. Yeah, relationships are critical. My coach and mentor, Sarah Fuentes, his coach as well, Julian Adler, says his line is, the only thing that matters is between people. And it's so true. That's where the magic happens, and that's where relationships are key. Hence, something like Women in Cleantech and Sustainability, bringing people together. Thank you, Lauren. How about you, Jessica? What are you doing to join the Decade of Action?
Well, thank you so much for inviting me on this panel. And so my name is Jessica Robinson, and I have been an environmental and zero waste practitioner in the line of addressing climate change for over a decade. And my nonprofit, Resilience Birthright Incorporated, has my 9-year-old, actually 10-year-old baby now, my carbon calculator, which is an actual tool that can mobilize communities, especially the youth, to track their sustainable actions so that they can address climate change. And it actually covers 9 out of 13 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And it focuses on showing people that their actions do matter, and there's features on it that allow communities to engage and track their particular actions and see how their actions of maybe commuting or reusing or refusing in time can actually be effective to removing the equivalence of CO2 that would be like removing a car off the road or saving trees. So analogies that people can understand, because during the time of my work, I've been encountered with the same questions or concerns that people have, saying that they don't know how their actions really make a difference, and they feel like they're just one person and this is such a big issue and they feel overwhelmed. And so my carbon calculator is a tool to help inspire and engage people, children, communities to realize, no, we are the power, we are the drivers of climate change, and we can steer the ship and move towards a brighter future.
Thank you so much. And you're right, especially something like climate change the problem feels so big that, and sometimes we feel so small to fix it, that it results in apathy. So thank you for putting together something that can help people understand their role and how they can influence the reality that they're looking to achieve. Sue, you're welcome. Sue, how about you? What are you doing to join the Decade of Action?
Yeah, well, I've been lucky to find an organization and job too that has a lot of alignment with my personal mission too in this space, which is all about collecting dots, connecting dots, and making action happen as a result of that. And that has a lot to do with the relationships that Lauren, you had mentioned as well. That's key to investing. And it's about going out there and talking to founders, to management teams, to other investors who we partner with to make things happen. For Antin, overall, they actually just launched this next gen team 6 months ago. And our mandate is to invest in to teams and to companies that are going to accelerate a more sustainable future over this next decade. So it's very aligned actually with the theme for this evening. And that's in energy and environments, in transportation, in digital infrastructure, in social infrastructure, including healthcare, education, agriculture, aquaculture, water. And I think what's really cool is the intersectionality of all of those different verticals. And so much of that is around climate and sustainability and connectivity and just better distribution too of resources that mean good change is more inclusive as well. Quick side note on the personal front, I think so much of this too is empowering more women to get into this space and more communities who are currently underrepresented both on the investment side as well as the founder side. So I look forward to exploring all of that and to joining all of you on making that happen.
Thank you, Sue. I have a lot of questions and we could spend all day just going through my questions, but I also know we have 126 people from our community online here, and we value all of your perspectives as well. So please put your questions into the chat, and then Gina will start sorting through them, and we will present these questions as well to our panel. So feel free to voice your questions in the chat there. And my next question for you ladies is, a lot of us have been following COP26. It's happening right now. This is the second week of it. And so from your perspectives, what are you seeing happening, or what should people be watching for here? Sue, I see you nodding, so I'm going to call on you first.
Yeah, you know, the two groups I'm looking at most are corporations and just citizens, less so than governments, right? Because I think governments have been around the table talking about this, but personal view is they sometimes are a little reluctant to act because of course they want to see what their constituents care about, versus corporations can be, certain corporations like Microsoft and Dawn and all too, can be quicker to take action when they see where the world is moving to and what their consumers want and demand. So I think a lot of these corporate commitments go a really long way, including in making renewable projects, sustainable projects happen, because they are the commercial off-takers, counterparties that are stepping up to enable some of the earlier stage companies to deliver on their business models. And then on the consumer front, like, it's actually been cool seeing how much chatter is out there. I'm probably in a little bit of a bubble for sure, but like there's a lot of chatter on just social media too, right, of people following it. And I think that's actually really important as well.
Mm-hmm. It's actually like, 5 years ago, or like, even, I shouldn't say that, like, I live in a bubble too. So I'm trying to think, okay, 5 years ago, was COP like a thing on social media as much as it is now? And well, for me, it probably was because I was following certain people, right? But I do feel like something has changed in terms of the climate conversation and the watchers of this event. It's less industry insiders and more average people who are really focused on what's going on, what are we doing, and can we do it fast enough? Kat, I see you nodding your head. What are you seeing in from COP26? What are you watching?
Definitely can relate to what you just said, Lisa. It's amazing to see the sheer size of involvement in COP26 compared to even just a few years ago, which is just incredible to see. Obviously, this community is growing so much larger. And I think what surprised me a bit, Lauren and I were actually on a call earlier this morning, which was the Global Plastic Treaty Act that we were discussing as part of the Ocean Plastic Leadership Network. And we were surprised that plastics weren't actually as big of a topic at COP26 as I think everyone anticipated it would be. So that caught us a little bit by surprise. As I mentioned earlier, it's playing such a significant role in GHG emissions, and most people are starting to realize that plastic pollution is climate change or associated with climate change. So I thought that was interesting. And I would love to hear my other panelists' viewpoint if you felt like it was still a major topic, but I thought it would be a little bit more front and center. But nevertheless, it's still something that many of us are working on. But still very exciting to see how much it's grown. The social media presence is just wildly huge. It's incredible.
Thank you. Thank you. How about you, Lauren? What are you
Yeah.
seeing from the Greenbiz perspective?
So I do not pretend to be a global policy expert by any means, but the word for me for COP, but generally as well, is just accountability. I think this is the time when companies, particularly, which is the area that I focus on mostly, they like to make flashy announcements and be out in front and have their name on things. And, you see all these shiny posts on social media. And the question that we always ask is, cool, now show us what you're doing. And I think it's easy to kind of let the limelight fade and not follow up on it later. So the area that I think most about that, I'd say, is 2025 coming quickly for packaging goals. The Ellen MacArthur Foundation global commitments to have, hundreds of brands and retailers committing to recyclable, compostable, or reusable packaging by 2025. Really coming up soon. So I'm curious how those companies are going to be held accountable. And so too, for any announcements coming out this week, whether it's around plastics or net zero or what have you, it's incumbent upon all of us to kind of continue to pay attention and to ask again if we haven't seen those companies sort of live up to what they've claimed that they're going to do. Because if they say they're going to do it, then they can't really just have the praise in the moment.
You mean you can't have your cake and eat it too? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Well, accountability is so key. Anybody who knows me knows that I really enjoy relationships where people are willing to take accountability, however small, for whatever is going on, right? And it's so often easy to just talk but not walk your walk. So I appreciate you pointing that out, because sometimes I think people get cynical about COP26 because these governments can get together and spend a lot of time talking and say, hey, we're gonna make this pledge, but there's really no teeth and there's nothing that holds anybody accountable except themselves. So countries have to be accountable to themselves, and that can be difficult sometimes. But I'm gonna get off my soapbox there. Jessica, how about you? What are you seeing?
So what I'm seeing and what I've seen over the past couple of years, especially when I was physically at the United Nations in 2019 before they shut down, is making sure that we have at-risk communities at the table, and also having their voices heard and not being shut down. I witnessed many youth unable to enter the UN from other countries that were, wanting to be present so they can share their stories and talk about what's happening in their countries. I think what we really need to look out for is the top-bottom approach, but specifically bottom-up approach, where we're focusing on at-risk communities and countries, engaging with the youth, with social and cultural change and public education and outreach. There are many programs that can make a difference and are making a difference on local levels, but if they're expanded and have the ability and the funding to scale, they can make massive changes. But we need to hear these stories and allow more people to the table. And so that I have mixed feelings just based off of what I witnessed and what I've been observing over the past couple of years with the conversation of climate change, as well as these gatherings and meetings and treaties. I concur when I say that it's easy to sign your business on a paper and say that you are declaring to do something, but it's what do you do afterward, and where does your funding go, and does it actually support the people that really need it?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All that. Yeah.
Oh, could I just jump in? I have a follow-up question to that, actually, panelists. I'm just curious if you guys have seen more executives at the companies showing up as opposed to those who are just in kind of an ESG role. I haven't tracked it long enough to really tell, but I think that's kind of interesting in terms of who is making the commitment at the organization. And it's like, if it's a top issue, then that's much more accountability when it's the CEO who's saying we are going to do X, Y, and Z, and hopefully that rolls fully down. Jessica, I know that's a little bit different from your point though, too, of certain communities being represented, but I think it's just curious if people are seeing that.
Sorry, go ahead, Jessica. No.
I was just going to say there's a mixture. there has been a mixture, but I feel that even if a company sends their representatives, they should uphold their pledge. Whether it's their CEO or whoever that they send. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I think if a company is going to say they're going to do something, they're going to do it no matter who made, who's quoted in the press release, right? Kat, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to, I'm curious, Sue, that now you mentioned it, I would love to see if there is any numbers to demonstrate from the corporate side, has their attendance changed and who they're sending? And I mean, like Jessica said, if they're making the promise, doesn't matter who said it from the company, they should adhere to it. But I feel like I have seen more CEOs step in when, 10 years ago, it was just environmental health and safety folks that they would send to these things. And then they get a report after and maybe read it. But I think you're right. I think we are seeing a shift into now these major leaders in the companies are showing up. And I would love to find out if we have numbers on that somewhere. So maybe we can follow up after that and see if anyone's tracking it.
Group homework.
Anybody
want to go out in there and track that? Let us know. We have a great question from Glenna Weissman, one of our board members who's part of leading the marketing committee here at Women in Cleantech and Sustainability. Glenna, do you want to ask your question?
Good evening, everyone. The Washington Post did a recent piece, just a really hard-hitting piece on the gap between what the emissions data that was coming from countries all over the world and the reality of the true emission count. There's a big gap between what they're reporting and what is the reality. How do we overcome that as a global community, and how do we keep them accountable? Thank you, Lisa Ann.
Yeah. Well, I'll say, go ahead, Kat.
No, Lisa, please.
Oh, I was going to say we're starting to see citizen groups implementing technology to track global emissions and using the power of the press to keep these companies accountable. I think to me that's inspiring because it's not self-reporting. It's a different entity that is tracking those emissions, specifically methane emissions are what I'm thinking of globally, especially in China. Go ahead, Sue. Kat, what were you going to say?
I was just going to point out to Glenna that this is something that's on my mind all the time. And I actually get quite frustrated when people send me life cycle analysis or data from kind of random sources sometimes. And this is happening across the globe, across the industries. And it is challenging to trust your data when it's not necessarily coming from a peer-reviewed source or a trusted source in that way. And then we're finding out that some of these countries are actually fudging, for lack of a better word, some of their emissions. And I think this
very
is
kind way of saying that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Right. And so I obviously am a more academic person and technical person, but this is where I do think we're going to start relying more on the academics and the national labs that are generating these modeling systems, these supercomputing systems that can model these things and accurately track them. And they're publishing them. I mean, they're out there. And so these governments can't really hide behind some of these numbers anymore when their own national labs have the ability to track it even better. And they're publishing that data. And so I think that that's really fascinating. And I think we're going to see more coming out of the technical community with their skills and tool sets that are able to truly model this and provide real-time numbers. So that's one way we can mitigate that, is looking to the academic or national lab communities across the globe. That's one suggestion.
I'd add to that some of the new technology companies as well. We've actually been looking at potential investment opportunities into a number of like drone, low Earth orbital satellite companies who are employing new imaging hardware and software to actually really be able to track methane plumes, track deforestation, down to like they can see like millimeter movements in forestry and all. It's kind of crazy too. So I think that technology is enabling the collection of data that will support actual tracking across the board.
See, that's the kind of global surveillance I can get behind.
Right?
Yeah, there are surveillance questions, of course.
Yeah, that's okay. But thank you, ladies. It's different topic, totally different topic. Speaking of these technologies, it can be very depressing sometimes if you think about climate change and really start to, think, oh, the next 10 years, what's it going to be like? But there's a lot of technologies out there that are, and some wonderful people behind these technologies that are working very diligently to ensure that we can mitigate some of the worst effects of climate change. So when you think into the future, the next 10, 20 years, what are some technologies that are really inspiring you? Lauren, how about you start?
Totally. One of the markets that I get most jazzed about is the resale market. So think about, bringing apparel, secondhand apparel into the 21st century. And in the next 5 years, so I don't even know what it'll be in 10 years, it's projected to reach to be a $77 billion market, and it's growing 11 times faster than traditional retail, which is just so ridiculously cool in my opinion. And the amount of investment going into the space is ridiculous. You have these huge brands that aren't known for secondhand, like Levi's, like Patagonia, like Nordstrom, like look at your news feed. Well, I'm definitely in a bubble of my news feed for that. But, every week I see a new brand getting on board. And I think that is so exciting. And what's even more exciting is the number of companies that are needing to pop up to enable that. It's a lot of stuff, a lot of individual items. So I think specifically, having tracking and traceability to be able to know what a specific garment is, not just this general garment, but this specific one, to know where it's been and where it needs to go next, to know, is it authentic, to know, if it's ready to reach the end of its useful life, should it be recycled, what's it made of, the tracking and traceability technology and the circular ID technology for those, I think is extremely exciting, as well as all the other pieces it'll take to make resale, the most common way to buy clothes.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you. Yeah, Jessica, go ahead.
I'm looking forward to the expansion of the reusable and refillable businesses. I've been seeing many businesses in the Bay Area pop up where you have refill stores where they allow you to purchase in bulk. They allow you to bring your reusable shampoo and conditioner containers, your laundry detergents, and just fill up. So that is literally nipping our issue with waste in the butt by allowing these companies to expand. And in Alameda, Berkeley, and San Francisco, COVID did halt some of these projects, but they're reviving once again. And it's the to-go-ware, and it's getting cities to actually have their own programs where they can actually reuse, where the citizens, the consumer, can go into a restaurant, order something to go, and actually take a to-go-ware box home, and then be able to leave it on their porch step and have it picked up to be washed and then reused again. And having these apps and different systems that are literally city run and supported by the citizens, where we can actually start eliminating the waste that we're seeing. So that is something I'm really looking forward to seeing expanding and just becoming a more cultural norm throughout the US.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jessica. I appreciate that. Thank you. Kat, Sue, what are you looking towards?
Sure. I think, one, I know these numbers and I know these discussions can get us down. And it certainly is hard to work in this field because the truth, I guess, so much more than others do. But that being said, I constantly feel optimistic and excited. And the amount of societal awareness that's continually growing, the amount of investment that's coming into research. I mean, being at NREL in the Bottle Consortium and seeing how much the US government alone is funding this research space, it's absolutely amazing. And I think, my fellow panelists were talking about the reuse and resale, and we're watching these B corporations and companies like Patagonia implement take back programs, while we, on the other hand, are developing the actual technologies to break down textile waste for the first time ever. I mean, it's really incredible. And so if you ask me what I'm most excited for the future technology-wise, I think it is these growing technologies that we're looking to implement in current infrastructure that keeps carbon in the economy forever. And again, pie in the sky, but textiles, plastic, all this stuff that we have enough waste of it right now to never touch oil again, at least for like 100 years or so. And so I'm excited to see all of these new implementations come onto the market to not just manage plastic, but to manage textiles, to manage paper, to manage food waste, and circularize our economy one step at a time.
Couldn't
Wonderful.
echo that
Thank
more.
you, Kat.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Sid. Go,
Huge
please.
on
Please.
that, and really love that Lauren, Jessica, and Kat have hit on the circularity piece across textiles, which make up 10% of annual global carbon, and is more actually than aviation and shipping combined, which is crazy. And big, on wastewater and the likes. But maybe I'll offer something a little different then, because that's been struck upon, which is innovations that are happening in the agri-tech world. So I've been looking a lot at what's happening in vertical farming. Actually, personally invested in vertical farming a couple of years ago, as well as indoor greenhouses, because many people don't realize 95% of leafy greens, the salads that you're eating for lunch and dinner, are actually grown in just 2 valleys in the US, in Yuma, Arizona, and Salinas Valley, California, and are driving, depletion of arable land, consume a tremendous amount of water. It's about 12 gallons of water per head of lettuce that you're eating, and require a lot of transportation, which of course has emissions entailed to it. So there's a big move now towards local production, for healthier foods that don't have pesticides, that are just better quality and have higher shelf lives too. And I think there's a lot of social elements around this too, because it's good jobs closer to urban centers. It's healthier foods into areas that, maybe sort of food deserts. And when you are buying these leafy greens and other produce grown nearby, you actually can double the shelf lives, which of course has a lot of value, and you're reducing wastage. So big sector, look at what's happening there.
All right, love it. Thank you. I didn't know some of that information about Yuma, and they have a big water problem there. So it's good to see that perhaps in the future you'll be more local with all of our food. I think that's definitely the way for us to go. Let me just check the time. Okay, we have about 5 minutes left. I do have one question that I wanted to make sure we got to, so I'm going to take the moderator's privilege and ask that question. So there are many that see some of the feminine aspects of humanity being best suited to solve the climate crisis. In fact, people have said the 21st century is the century for women, and that feminine leadership skills and styles are the ones that everybody, no matter what your gender, actually prefers. So my question for the panel here is, what aspects do you think the feminine part of humanity brings to the table that are valuable in this decade of action? Jessica, how about we start with you?
Thank you. I would say love, compassion, and understanding. They're in a world that we are facing today, where there's so much separation and anxiety, and so many stresses put upon families, households. There's more economic disadvantages. Before COVID, we were already seeing these issues, and it was already a challenge to get people and communities to care and to see that they can take action. We're going to need more than ever now to come together in unity. And the way to do that is through compassion and love. So I feel like that is a characteristic that I hold, and many women in my life have inspired within me and within my friends and community. And I feel like that is something that we have an advantage and that we can leverage. But I really do believe that the way out of this challenge with climate change and also just the pressures on society, love is going to be our compass.
Thank you for that reminder, Jessica. Thank you. Kat, how about yourself?
Well, I definitely agree with everything Jessica said. And I love this question because it's something I forget about, that all of the warriors I meet in sustainability are almost 100% of the time women. Not always. There's obviously some amazing men out there doing great things, but there is this feminine aspect to sustainability, to green, lifestyles. And I do think a lot of that comes from empathy, compassion, and love, like Jessica outlined. And I think a lot of that also comes from the inherent feminine ability to multitask, because there's not just one problem. As we've discussed on this panel, there's degenerative farming. We're losing our soil, we're losing our trees, we have an enormous amount of plastic pollution, we're polluting the skies, we're doing so much. And I think the feminine natures have a tendency to be able to handle all these problems at one time, while sometimes masculinity is very one-sided. And so I think that's why there's such a strong feminine presence in this world, because we're not completely burdened by the huge problem. If anything, it motivates that kind of feminine spirit. And then also that love and connection that the feminine aspect tend to have to the planet. And I don't just mean, when I say feminine, just women. I mean, obviously, gender's a spectrum, and people across the spectrum have feminine energy. But I do think there's a reason we call her Mother Earth, right? Because there's just something inherently strong in femininity when it comes to our planet. And it's pretty wonderful. And that's why there's this incredible panel of women and the women in clean tech and sustainability. So yeah, those are my thoughts there.
Yeah, thank you, Kat. How about you, Sue?
Yeah, I mean, you ladies said it so well, and I would just add, it's like humility as well. I think it's the humility to you're juggling all of those things, and it requires a lot of just groundedness to also say, like, I don't know, I need help, I have more questions than answers, and who are the people I need to bring to the table to help solve this all together. And by the way, for me too, I'm a big believer in bringing the big oil, big ag, big, everything to the table, because that is where the carbon is today. That is, I think there's sometimes a bit of an approach, which is like, they are wrong and it's a us against them thing. And I see women being able to help create some of these bridges and asking more of the, like, okay, why are things the way they are today? Why not think about things, right, a little bit differently? And sort of extend that love and compassion, Jessica, that you're talking about as well, so that we're all actually working towards the same goal on this one mother, Earth and Mother Nature that we live in.
Absolutely, thank you, Sue. That collective problem solving is actually a very common feminine leadership style. So bringing people get together and creating community to solve a problem together. And making sure everyone's voice is heard is a very common leadership style of people who are more on the feminine spectrum. So thank you, Sue, for that. Lauren, I'll give you the final word here. What do you think?
I love these answers. They're such a warming way to end this conversation. Definitely complexity, the ability to hold sort of all of the tensions that arise when trying to navigate just through things that do not always add up and are not clear. Definitely connection. And the other thing that's coming up for me is sort of the wisdom to be able to move slow when necessary. I think there's the sense of urgency that needs to fuel us, but this perspective to know when to slow down, to bring in more voices, to ask harder questions, to think twice about something. I think there's the slowing down to move quickly. And I think I think a lot about the mechanics of systems change, and the quote that change happens at the speed of trust is so true for me. And it takes some patience and slowness to be able to build that trust, to create meaningful, long-lasting systems change.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that, because so often in a startup culture, at least, or Silicon Valley culture, it's, just be in action, default to action, just, figure it out later, fail forward, just move, right? But with complex challenges such as climate change and all of the different systems and stakeholders and organizations that need to be at the table to make systemic lasting change, there's benefit to slowing down and saying, okay, where are we going to focus? What are the tough questions? And let's make sure we're all trusting each other to do this, because otherwise it's a failure of the commons. One country will do something, the other country doesn't, but we all share the same air and the same planet. So we all have to do it together.
Yep.
If we're really going to come out of this as one humanity, and a thriving humanity. And we'll come out of it regardless, right? Mm-hmm. How many of us are on this planet in 100 years, it remains to be seen based on the decisions that we are making in the next 10 years. So thank you all, ladies, for joining us. Very inspiring. We have a lot of power as individuals in this space, in this organization, as people who identify on the feminine side of the spectrum. We have a lot of power and influence, and I think we all get a chance to start using it a little bit more, being a little bit more assertive. Remember, well-behaved women rarely make history. So I leave you all to go back into the world and make that history we all desperately need. So thank you all very much for joining us today.
Thank you, WCS.
You also.
You're welcome.
That's wonderful.
Thank you. Okay. Whew. What a panel. I next have the pleasure of introducing to you Dawn James, who is our keynote speaker for this event. She is the U.S. Sustainability Strategy and Thought Leader for Microsoft when it comes to sustainability. And she's delivering on digital transformation solutions more specifically. Microsoft, as you may have heard, is our first enterprise level sponsor here at WCS. We're really honored to have them on the WCS roster as a corporate member. And you're welcome to contact any of the Women in Cleantech and Sustainability board members or representatives on this call if you happen to know another company who might want to be a corporate member. Sorry, shameless plug. It's my job. I had to do it. Okay. Previously, Dawn has held positions at Halliburton and various other positions as a geologist and a hydrologist, specifically at the U.S. Geological Survey. So she has this really broad background of understanding from both the science perspective and corporate worlds. So she brings a lot to the table for Microsoft, and we're really honored to have her here. Please welcome Director of U.S. Sustainability and Environmental Sciences for Microsoft, Miss Dawn James. Dawn, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you so much, Lisa, for such a wonderful introduction. And, first of all, it's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you all for having me today. And all the folks that reached out to me on LinkedIn, thank you. What an amazing community. And it's just, it's such a privilege to be able to speak to you this afternoon or this evening. It's late for me here in Houston, but happy to share what I have to say here, and hopefully to answer a few questions when we're finished. So I'm going to get started. Again, my name is Dawn James. I'm at Microsoft. I am responsible for our U.S. sustainability strategy. And on the next slide, we'll go ahead and jump into it. And on the next slide, we'll go ahead and jump into it. So what are systems, right? Sometimes they're big, sometimes they're like monolithic pillars. They're things like government, they're things like education or private businesses. There are systems that are like racial systems. There's earth systems. One of the things that we know about systems that they're monolithic, they're typically expensive. They are honestly very, very complex. And what we also know about these systems is that when they're politically charged, They're extremely difficult to change. Rarely what we see about these systems, especially when they're monolithic and they're pillar-like, they do everything for the people. They very rarely do everything for the people for whom the system serves. On the next slide, what we see and what we know is that in the shadows between the pillars, other systems grow, right? They grow in the cracks, because what we see is that people have needs, and these needs aren't met by the big systems, right? This could be in the form of coalitions that grow up. This can be in the form of climate action committees, ERGs within organizations. This can also be small groups of people, individuals coming together to form new companies that provide a niche solution to these kind of monolithic systems that exist, right? And what we know is that the reason why these new systems grow up in the cracks is because there's a need. They're answering a specific call. Okay, on the next slide. One of the things that we see about these new systems that grow up in between the pillars is that they tend to take on a life of their own, right? They typically grow beyond their original intent as a stopgap, right? They get sometimes unwieldy, even as wieldy as their big core pillars. They don't necessarily have the same governance features or security, but typically what we see this scenario in is within industries. We see these new systems coming up within governments, within individual organizations, and it points to the same core sentiment that we need to go faster, and we need to go faster with purpose, right? So what we see is that organizations and the people that they're meant to serve can't wait for monolithic development to solve all of their problems. They need solutions that can be designed and created by the people closest to the problem. So on the next slide, once again, I'm really grateful to talk to you at this time, because this is a critical time. I think that, based on the panel that we just heard, and all of us who are sitting in this space, we know the urgency that we're facing right now, and this is an extraordinary challenge. Not only are we looking to stabilize our climate by building quickly towards a net zero, but we also know that fundamentally, the many organizations and individuals that are setting these targets to achieve this kind of carbon neutrality, it's not enough, right? We've been talking about that today. The pledges that we're seeing from organizations, from governments, even if they're fully achieved, it's gonna fall short, right? And so one of the ways I see this is the ultimate group project, right? We need to fundamentally transform very common practices to not only avert climate disaster, but figure out how we're going to thrive moving forward. On the next slide, I just want to reiterate again the circuitous route that I took to get to where I am today. I know that maybe some of you have had similar background to me. I'm a geoscientist. I majored in geology. Not only is this extremely personal to me as a geoscientist and as a mother, but this is also, it's very important that where I work and at Microsoft, that my values can align with the specific work that I do. So yes, I have a very broad range from working in geotechnical engineering as a hydrogeologist for the government and also in energy. When I first started at Microsoft, I started as the energy lead and then moved into sustainability. So I talk across all of our prioritized sectors and really look at not only Microsoft's practices and what we're doing as an organization, but how we show up to our customers, how we show up to our partners, and how we show up in making sure that we are transparently fulfilling our commitments. So on the next slide, Microsoft's mission is to really look at its core business and harness that power of technology to help every person and every organization on the planet to do more towards a sustainable future. And again, this is a very robust goal. It's something that isn't taken lightly. And it is something that is infused in everything that we do at Microsoft. On the next slide, one of the ways that we look at this is as how we move forward in bringing together two types of systems, right? We really look at the duality between physical systems and digital systems, but making sure that we use the perspective of society, understanding those with the least among us need a seat or a voice at the table for how we're building these solutions moving forward. So we look across vertical industries, horizontal enablers, and look how we can scale across both axes moving forward. We also look at the technology, hardware assets versus platform, and how we innovate our platform for both hardware or for asset performance and for innovation across a platform. We also take a hard look at the workforce and what it means to combine both digital brick and mortar with physical systems, brick and mortar physical systems with digital enablement systems, and what that means for the worker today, right? Combining this enhanced workforce with the flexible or gig economy. And what we see really is this advent of a portfolio career, and which is actually quite similar to the type of career that I've had, right? And I see this across Microsoft, that there's a place for this idea of, workers don't have loyalty to companies anymore. Folks have loyalty to purpose, right? And that is what breeds loyalty, right? Is that you have this aligned purpose, that you can go to work every day and do work that is aligned with your values. On the next slide, one of the things here at Microsoft with our approach, right? So we're focused on being a platform provider of technology, and specifically have solutions to solve environmental challenges. So we focus on the 4 challenge areas defined by the UN Climate Accords: the carbon, waste, water, and ecosystems. We've pledged to be carbon negative, waste zero, and water positive, and also to build a planetary computer to help manage and track biodiversity within our ecosystems. We apply digital acceleration solutions to all areas across our products and services, also in how we face our customers. We advocate for policies that are aligned with our own goals as well as with societal goals to move us all towards this net zero goal. Also, we infuse a number of these type of digital solutions that align with the science and international goal within not only our own operations, but really building this leading platform of technology solutions that will apply across the gamut when we're talking about decarbonizing supply chains, when we're talking about connected systems and eliminating diesel fuel from transportation vehicles, and also moving towards 100% renewable energy for our data centers, and also providing that carbon savings for our customers. So, and at the core of what we talk about within our approach is really our employees. And one of the reasons why we put our employees really at the center is because people are the most important thing within our mission, right? So one of the things that we talk about at Microsoft, and we were talking about this a little bit today on the panel, is how do we make these systemic changes, right? We talked about the monolithic pillars and how difficult and complex they are, all these multivariate systems that control how these pillars actually function, right? How do we change that, right? And one of the things that at Microsoft, we like to have things that come in threes. Our mission is to focus on people first, then we focus on the planet, And lastly, to change behavior, we focus on profits, right? And so that's our goal, that's our mission. And one of the things that we know, and it's a fantastic strategy, it's great, but what we know is that culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? We all know this adage. We know, right, that companies that are created at the same time in the same market pursuing the same strategy will become two very different entities. And why is that? It's because of the people that work for the companies are different. So people, even as they come together in service for something greater, will retain their own personalities, their passions, their hopes, and their dreams, right? So the shared experience and constant interactions between people is what makes a company, right? And it makes them create something new, right? So on the next slide, we understand that it's a great responsibility in the promise of the mission that I just explained, empowering every person and organization on the planet. And it calls for us to understand both the potential power and the potential combined efforts as a company, right? So we understand that those who have more have to do more, which is why we've made such robust goals to be carbon negative, to remove all of the historic carbon since Microsoft's inception in 1975. And also knowing that our culture within Microsoft directly affects the world around us. One of the things that we talk about here is that the why Microsoft is making these type of commitments and putting, we put $1 billion in a climate innovation fund, specifically targeted money that goes towards technology to advance climate change mitigation solutions, right? $1 billion. And on top of that, we've imposed our own internal carbon tax across our business units. And that money goes directly to fund innovation and advancements in climate tech and clean tech and climate tech, right? So one of the things, like I mentioned, is that how our sphere of influence, all of the things that we touch, we're 175,000 employees across the globe, and we have a tremendous reach, right? And so one of the things that we landed on was for us to have these shared experiences and constant interactions that create our culture. We have to have a very strong growth mindset. And that's what we landed on. We landed on what was really important to us and the soul of who we are. And it's a culture founded on growth mindset, right? So on the next slide, part of our mission is really understanding that the value of the work it's the value of the work that really matters, right? And it's important that we understand that it all comes together in a succinct framework. So one of the things that we know is that being able to bridge the gap between our aspirational culture, which is that of a growth mindset, and being able to digitally accelerate and be able to be the software provider to help every person, every organization on the planet to do more. That's an aspirational culture. And how do we bring that aspiration to land within our lived reality, right? To be able to drive the systemic change. And what was said on the other panel, it's empathy, right? And it's putting that empathy into action, right? Because we're committed to not only providing equal access and equitable access to technology, but also to serve as a platform for other people's successes, right? So how do we do that, right? We have to bridge this gap. And the way that we bridge that gap, yes, it's with love, right? But it's also with empathy so that we truly understand others' thoughts and feelings, right? We put ourselves in other people's shoes. And in that way, we're not doing things for our own profit, but we're doing things for other people, right? And so empathy is truly that framework that we use, right, to guide our actions, right? And this is actually part of our core mission, right? On the next slide, Satya, our CEO, he talks about empathy makes you a better innovator, It's at the core of how we look at this, not only as an opportunity, but a responsibility to shape our world to be more sustainable, right? So what we truly enthusiastically believe is that by using the power of technology to turn data into action, we're using empathy to bridge the gap between our aspirations and the lived reality, right? And so we can transform these monolithic systems to meet the new demands and markets to build a more sustainable future. So again, thank you so much for having me. On the last slide, I'm happy to connect. Again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Dawn. Now, if we were in a live session, you'd hear all kinds of applause for your great keynote. Thank you so much. We have a few questions and we have a few minutes, so I'd like to take the opportunity to ask you a few questions if you don't mind.
Sure.
You mentioned having this growth mindset, and I'm wondering how a big corporation like Microsoft balances that growth mindset at the corporate level while also realizing that there's a definition of success as corporate growth is not always sustainable for the planet. And this question comes from Alyssa Clark, who is in our audience today.
Yeah.
So how do you balance this sustainability and growth of a corporation?
Yeah, it's interesting because I am not a tech person. I'm new to the tech world. I came from industry and I've been at Microsoft for under 3 years now. And so it's something that's new to me too. I think that the first time, and I come from a very male dominated hardcore science, we read before. I came from Halliburton, I came from the government, and when I came into Microsoft, it wasn't easy. Right, the culture here is very, very strong, and I had a few bumps in the road when I first started. And my supervisor, he said, "Dawn, you need to have empathy for for the folks that I was having difficulty with." And I'm like, "What? They need to do their job." What are you talking about? I'm going to have empathy. What does that mean, right? Like in this context, like I didn't understand what it meant in a business context, right? Because to me, like I said, just go do your job. Why do I have to know why you're not doing your job, right? Mm-hmm. Now, 2.5 years later, I understand, right? And he wasn't telling me to commiserate or anything like that. He was telling me to understand why they're making the decisions that they're doing, to put myself in their shoes. And within Microsoft, it is a very, very strong way that we communicate, right, with empathy, and it's systematic, right? It's not a choice, right? Just like any other training that you get at a corporation, how you behave in a meeting, how you talk to one another, how you express your bias and your vulnerability, all of those things, they're serious. They're serious about creating an environment of psychological safety. The ERGs are extremely powerful. I've never seen ERGs like this before. I've never seen the number of speakers, the way that we sponsor. I've literally never seen anything like this before. And it's good for business. Who knew, right? Being nice.
Soccer.
Right? And for me personally, it's fantastic to walk into a customer and to talk with customers and partners. I work across our startup ecosystem as well, and not have to give a spiel, not have to be inauthentic. It's because the grace that's given by implementing a systematic empathy within the company is a lot, and it means a lot, right? It allows you to show up as your real self. And it's not perfect, right? It's still a company, it's still bureaucracy. But in employing a growth mindset as part of the core mission for an organization, and then building it off of innovation and agility is something new, right? Mm-hmm. And they're doing it, and it's profitable.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. And for those who don't know, I think you used a term ERG.
Oh, Employee Resource Group. Yeah, so those are like, so I belong, gosh, I think I belong to about 4 of them. So Blacks at Microsoft, Women at Microsoft, Latinx at Microsoft, LGBTQ, all of those type of ERGs. And like I mentioned, very powerful. I've been came from Halliburton, came from a lot of other companies. And I had to start one time in one of my companies. I had to start when we're working parents. But here at Microsoft, they're very well funded, well supported with the senior leadership. And there's not a lot of, there's a lot of freedom within the ERGs. And they put on, they really help you to find your family at work.
Oh, that's cool. I appreciate that. A couple of years ago, we had a speaker at WCS Talks from Levi's who talked about find your tribe.
Yeah.
You know, just keep at it. Keep looking for people who are like you in your mindset and what you believe in, and you will find your home.
Absolutely. In the corporate world, it's essential.
Absolutely. My other question for you before we go to our ideathon is this idea of an internal carbon tax on business units. Can you briefly explain what that looks like or how it works without revealing anything proprietary?
Yeah, well, we've actually been fairly what's the word for it? Transparent. So if I can find it real quick, I'll pop the link in there. But basically, our current carbon fee is $15 per metric ton, and it covers all scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. Unlike some companies, our internal carbon tax isn't like a shadow fee or brown dollars, right? It's not that it's calculated and not charged. The business units are actually charged. And that fee is paid by each division within our business. And it's based on its own specific emissions. And then the funds are used to pay for sustainability improvements and innovations across the organization.
That's great. Do you have an example of what some of those funds were used for?
I can, well, I don't know if I can give you
that's okay.
Specifically.
No, I was just
we have circular recycling center within our data center.
That's a good example.
To fund that, and then also our recycling program and our renewables program, among other things.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Okay, I was just being curious. Didn't mean to put you on the spot there.
No, that's okay.
Well, thank you so much, Dawn, for this talk and for your insights. Empathy plus proximity equals action, I think, is a wonderful equation that those of us with scientific minds can take hold of. I'm going to use this equation in my life. And I really appreciate you reminding us to have empathy and how it can work in tandem with sustainability and the growth culture that a lot of corporations have. So thank you very much for being here. And I look forward to learning about what that planetary computer is.
Oh, well, it's on our website. It's almost that time here.
Well, thank you so much for staying up with us.
Okay.
And thank you for staying up with us and taking time out of your busy day to be with us today.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Of course. Well, thank you, everybody, for staying with us for our Ideathon. This is, we have a networking session too. Sarah Fuentes, I can invite you back to the virtual stage, I believe. And we're going right into the Ideathon, I do believe, but somebody can jump in and correct me if I am wrong. Yeah? Oh, we have a networking session first.
We have networking first, yes.
Fantastic. Sarah, welcome back.
I just wanted to say one of the major takeaways that I got from Don James right now was the loyalty to purpose. That was pretty impactful. That was, when you have an organization and people that are committed to a company and working at a company a long duration of time, I find a lot of value in that, and as we're thinking about going into this Ideathon and our networking session, how we're going to make some connections today that you could be knowing for the next 10 years to kind of inspire ourselves. So we want to thank today all of our cross promotion partners and our sponsors again, and every single member that's on the call. We really appreciate you wherever you're calling from. You're going to have an opportunity here relatively soon to make some new connections. So we'll check in with our producer to see if we're ready to go into our Zoom rooms.
We are. Let's do it.
All right.
All right, wonderful. Take this time, meet as many people as you can in our Zoom rooms. Your facilitators will help facilitate the conversation. Enjoy yourselves, and we look forward to seeing you in about 10 minutes. As people start filing back in here, we will move on to our next bit of the event. Did everyone have a good breakout session? Once you got in there?
Some people are still in the rooms for 15 seconds, I believe, all the way to the end.
Yeah, they'll go right to the end. That is for sure. For those of you that are back already, at Women in Cleantech and Sustainability, we really value networking and relationships. And I will want to remind you all that networking is one of those things that you get out as much value as you put into it. And so you meet people today, you meet people on the Slack or on the virtual chat. And if you go follow up with them on LinkedIn and have virtual coffee or what have you, have those meetings and take the time to get to know each other. Because if you don't, then what was the point of showing up and doing the networking in the first place, right? So welcome back, everybody. I want to introduce my good friend, Sarah Fuentes, again, our vice chair here at Women in Cleantech and Sustainability. And she is going to lead us into our next section of this event, our youth panel, because as we all know, the youth will inherit what we give them. And we feel it's important here to give them a voice and a time on our virtual stage to talk about the issues that concern them. Sarah,
definitely want to hear these youth today, and I think I want to go into introduction. When I first met this young lady, she was an MBA at Presidio Graduate School, currently holds a BS in human biology, and she recently was married. Ellie Sharp Reed has this really amazing title because I've had the opportunity to observe her transformation from student to now being a working professional, a certification director at the Climate Neutral, which is a nonprofit tech startup working to decarbonize the corporate sector by setting rigorous standards for climate action. And today we get the privilege of having Ellie, one of our current board members and co-chair of the career development, that's running an amazing mentorship program, which is so dear to my heart because mentorship is critical to the foundation of our organization, of mentoring women in this organization through their career, navigating, even in personal life, you know, we lean on each other for personal stuff as well. You know, tips and tricks and lifestyle in the zero waste lifestyle. So, but today I just have the privilege of introducing Ellie Sharp Reed, our moderator, our board member, my good friend. Ellie, welcome to the stage. How you doing, girlfriend?
Thank you so much, Sarah. This is such a special moment to be on this, I guess, virtual stage next to you. You've been such a wonderful mentor and relentless advocate for me over the past few years. So thank you, Sarah. For everyone else, hello and welcome. I'm so excited to be here tonight. Thanks for joining for our 10th anniversary, and especially thank you to our panelists who are here sharing this time with us tonight. I'm Ellie Sharp Reed. I am a board member here at WCS. I co-chair the Career Development Committee, and in my day job, I'm also the certification director at another nonprofit, as Sarah mentioned, called Climate Neutral. I get to work with companies to define and begin urgent and ambitious climate action. So while my work focuses mostly on the corporate side of the climate space, I'm really delighted to broaden the conversation to topics like environmental justice, policy, tech, equity, community, and so much more as we dive into tonight's youth climate panel. We're going to hear from 4 wonderful, thoughtful, dedicated young women who are leading a new generation of climate activism. I've encouraged our speakers tonight to share their unique personal experiences with climate change, and you're going to hear from them how climate is changing their world, they're impacting their lives, their communities, and really changing their futures. I'm very excited with how this panel is going to build on some of the messages we've already heard about tonight, from empathy to community to everything else in between. And you've really heard strong themes of hope and resilience to combat the magnitude of this climate crisis. It's an honor to follow our keynote speaker by introducing new voices to this conversation, and I'm confident you'll hear the pragmatism, positivity, and purpose in their words as well. So without further ado, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome our panelists tonight, Angel, Hazel, Isabel, and Maya. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. All right, just a quick note before we dive into the audience. As we go through our conversation, please add your questions and comments into the chat. You've been doing a great job of this all night. We will open this up for Q&A towards the end of our segment. So let me dive into introductions. I'll actually ask each of you, our panelists, to introduce yourselves. If you could start with your name, where you're from, and then tell us a little bit about your story. How did you find your way into climate activism? And if you can also talk a little bit more, what does climate change look like in your community?
Hi, my name is Angel. My pronouns are she, her. I am a third-year student, double majoring in psychology and English at the University of the Pacific. I'm from Walnut Creek, California. And I guess my tangible climate story really started during my fellowship with the California Climate Action Corps this summer. I was placed at a nonprofit focused on food recovery and food waste diversion. And it was really awesome being able to engage with climate action from a community health and equity lens. And that's really what really threw me into climate justice and climate action work. And I think climate change in my community really means, I think someone mentioned this earlier, really proactively amplifying the voices of at-risk communities, prioritizing the needs of those most impacted, and really deferring to those historically marginalized groups and prioritizing, again, their needs and their voices in this conversation. And I will pass it off to Hazel.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Hazel Najinda. My pronouns are she, her. I'm connecting from Uganda, and I'm the founder of Climate Operation. So my journey in the climate space actually started while I was at law school, and I was basically just getting to realize that most developed countries are, bringing in renewable energy, while, like, for example, in Uganda, we're actually just bringing in fossil fuels. Those need actually about climate crisis and how certain activities are actually going to damage our planet and our futures as well. So that is how I got into Climate Operation, and we have been working for a year now, just educating people and making the climate crisis very relatable to them here in Uganda. And I'll pass it on to Maya.
Maya or Isabel, do you want to continue?
I'll continue. Hi, my name is Maya. I'm currently taking a gap year. I just graduated from high school. And my climate activism journey probably started in elementary school when me and some of my friends were trying to get recycling bins at our school. And in 5th grade, we had petitions. We talked to the principal, and in 5th grade, we finally got them. So that was really the start. And then this summer, I also participated in the California Climate Action Corps program, like Angel. And I was paired with UC San Diego's, essentially their educational equity center. And I worked on climate education, especially to 3rd through 5th graders. And it affects the community. And I think I'm just repeating a lot of things that you said, but the way I've looked at it, it's very equity focused. It's very focused on these underserved communities who maybe don't have the same access to resources and who will be more affected than climate change than a lot of others. So just educating them on the problem and then helping them find ways and solutions. And then I'll pass it on to Isabel.
Hi, my name is Isabel. I'm currently attending UCLA, and I got into climate activism in high school my freshman year. I had a biology teacher who was an environmentalist at heart, and he basically connected the dots for me that humans were responsible for the planet, but I think more importantly that we had the power to reverse that damage. And that encouraged me to take action, and I decided to join his environmental club. And later on, I joined my city's environmental group, the Climate Corps of the city of Santa Monica, where we focus on plastic pollution, getting a sustainability plan passed by our school, advocating for that, and also local policy to continue advocating for sustainability in our city. And yeah.
Great. Thank you each for introducing yourselves. I think it's so incredible to hear how varied each of your experiences have been, and yet tied unanimously to this guiding idea and purpose of climate work. I do think we're seeing a shift where more and more of our jobs across industries and types of roles are going to be tied back to climate. And of course, we're at this defining moment right now with world leaders meeting literally as we speak at COP26 to discuss and debate the path forward. While there's a lot coming out of COP26 that's encouraging, it also feels like there's some disappointing lack of commitment from our world leaders. I'd like to dive in right now into how situations like this make climate work particularly challenging on the ground level and where you've perhaps found yourself getting stuck. So Hazel, we'll start with you on this one. Reflecting on your own work, where do you feel that the youth perspective is missing from the conversation? And what spaces should we be focused on to amplify youth voices more?
Yeah, I mean, you just talked about COP26, right? And how right now, as we're actually having this session, our world leaders are, liberating the future environment. And I think where young people really are missing is the example of COP26. Most of this were actually climate striking, while there were actually people in those rooms making decisions. It would have been amazing if some of those youth were actually in those rooms also deliberating. So I think that is one of the places whereby youth voices need to be amplified when it comes to climate policy. So that is something that I definitely want to see happening in the future.
All right, what about you, Isabel? Where do you think the youth perspective is missing?
I agree with Hazel, definitely in that area, but also in corporate America. At the end of the day, corporate America also influences our democracy and policymaking. So I believe that by having companies invite the youth, like in this panel, and have them share their perspectives on the decisions they're making, and I think that's a great way to amplify our voices and to have them hear our perspective, because at the end of the day, the decisions they take are going to impact our future. And I feel definitely our voices needs to be in that area.
Angel or Maya, do you have thoughts on this one?
The only thing I would add is just like, I think they both said this already, but we're the ones who are going to be facing a lot of the brunt of the climate crisis. And a lot of the decisions are being made by a lot of old people, especially in politics and corporations, like being made by seniors who quite frankly won't be around for a lot of it. So I just think that amplifying youth voices is so critical across all the fields, not especially corporations and politics, because that is where so many of the major decisions are being made.
Angel, what about you? Anything to add?
Of course, I'm going to echo everything that my fellow panelists have said, because they are amazing and they have such awe-inspiring insights. And I also want to add on by saying, like, within education, I think a lot of times the way climate change is framed traditionally, it can make it seem like it's very hard to see the forest for the trees. Like people get caught up in, the academic jargon, really the kind of objective science-y portion of it, which is absolutely important. But I think youth have a very on the ground grassroots kind of perspective on climate change and climate action as the people kind of witnessing the progression into potential mass ecological collapse, something that we will face like the repercussions of it. So I think youth a lot of times have the personal meaning making part of climate education down. And I think that because of that, youth should also have a large part in designing curriculums and designing education surrounding climate change because of their active role as stakeholders in it.
Great. Thanks. That's a perfect segue into the next topic I want to talk about, which is really about your communities and your peers. So this will be a little bit of a two-parter, if you'll go with me. First, I'm curious if you could share with the audience, how do your peers feel about climate change? Your immediate family, your immediate circle, your friends, the folks that you connect with most, how do they feel about climate change? And then related to that, how do you think we need to engage more folks in that conversation, especially youth, around the world in different demographics, from children to young adults into adulthood? What methods have you found to be the most engaging and effective for conveying this important message? Who wants to start?
Yeah,
Maya?
The first part, I would say that there's definitely an awareness in my peers about climate change. Like basically everyone knows that climate change is a concern and they're aware of it, but oftentimes there's a feeling that it's really overwhelming and nothing they really do is going to help because it's such a big issue and they're one person. And so what are they going to really be able to do that hasn't already been done? And then there's also a second part to that of like, oh, the corporations, they're the ones causing climate change. So I'm so small in comparison to that. So nothing I do is going to do as much as the corporations changing, so I don't need to do anything. So I do think there's kind of an ambivalence there that we need to try to combat. And then for the second part and making it accessible and interesting, especially with younger kids, something I found is you really need to make it hands-on and fun. And so when you think of climate change, you don't usually think of fun. But for example, with 3rd through 5th graders, like we had them make solar ovens and make s'mores. And then we talked about the greenhouse effect and how that was what baked their s'more, but just how that's harming the earth on a larger scale, even if we're making fun s'mores. And so just making it fun and making hands-on activities and not just diving in directly into, oh, climate change is such this big issue. We need to all do anything. It's more just like having them understand what it is before we start talking about what you can do.
Fantastic. Who else has thoughts on this? I know this is an important topic in all of your work to date.
I would agree with Maya. Definitely everyone I'm surrounded with knows that climate change exists and that it is a reality and they are concerned. However, they're often unaware that even like, as Maya said, they're not hardcore environmentalists, they can still be part of the solution. And I often, what I see is that they don't see the connection on how doing small sustainable steps, such as taking public transportation or adopting plant-based meals or living a zero waste lifestyle, is directly connected to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And they don't see exactly how their individual effort is valuable to the collective impact that we're trying to make. So I think that social media, for example, or as was mentioned previously on the panel, apps, for my generation, I think it's a great way to engage the youth more in the discussion and also to make it more accessible for the less privileged, as now everyone basically has technology and would have access to these resources. And but what I really think is the most effective would be implementing education at a very young age for kids, and this would require schools to adopt it into their mission statement or even like a required class. And I'm Mexican German, so I've seen the contest between my friends in Germany and Mexico. For example, with sorting waste, in Germany, you have 6 separate bins for waste. And since you're little, you're taught how to sort your waste into those 6 bins. In Mexico, where the waste is not as great, people don't really know where goes what. So definitely I've seen how education from an early age is key to engaging the youth. Also, like Maya said, through fun ways.
Great. Hazel, can I pass it to you? I'm curious to get an international perspective from your part of the world.
Definitely. Well, in my community, it's kind of two ways. I have peers that know about the climate crisis, but then just like Maya, they're kind of like a bit overwhelmed by it. And in their opinion, they actually do not have that much to contribute. Then I also have peers who actually do not know a thing about the climate crisis. And of course, this is majorly because of the way the climate crisis is being communicated today. I mean, to a certain point, it's really heavily whitewashed. It's not relatable at all. So there is also that part, and that's why there's always the need for more relatable climate education. And then when it comes to how best can we engage young people, something that I've seen that has really worked with climate operation is that we make everything very activity based. So for example, if we're going to school, we'll always involve them, like let's say in tree planting activities, in art sessions. Then we also make it really relatable to the situation. Like now, for example, here in Uganda, I would not educate a young person about the polar bear. Okay, I would tell them about it, but I wouldn't relate, for example, ice caps melting. Uganda, it does not know. So if I'm educating someone here of the climate crisis, I'll bring things, plants like them, because that is something that is actually happening and is impacting us. So making it relatable, fun, and very, very digestible and not too scientific is a great way in which I think young people can really get engaged with climate action.
Wonderful. You guys are picking up on really good threads on how to reach youth around climate education. Angel, did you want to add to this one too?
Yeah, I think similar to Maya, I've witnessed just like a sense of detachment and disillusionment. And I think a lot of this has to do with how kind of non-solution oriented climate education is. I think around the US and around the world generally. I just remember this one activity we had to do for my fellowship as a cohort of all like the California fellows across the state. And the question that we were asked by the facilitator was like, when you think of climate action or climate change, what's like the first word or the first phrase that pops into your head? And 95% of the responses were, greenhouse gas emissions, ecological concern, environmental, damage. And the facilitator, after asking that question, like looked at our responses and said, did you notice that almost none of your responses were solutions or ideas oriented? They were all kind of looking towards the climate doom perspective of climate action. And I think that really opened my eyes into the possibilities like related to engaging youth, because I think that youth as a community would benefit from like an asset-based like development perspective in which like we are kind of taught to leverage our resources, as like the next wave of consumers, as the next wave of advocates, as people who are very much like internet literate and are using like infographics to make education widely accessible, to make knowledge open source without any like without a second thought. That's what we just kind of instinctually revert to. And so I think that's really awesome to see. And for us to reframe that ability into like a really awesome strength, I think is really where like the next wave of activism and youth engagement in climate action is kind of what I'm thinking with this question.
Awesome. I think we've solved it here, you guys. What do you think? It's got to be small, bite-sized, and delivered in a fun way through social media, internet, and apps so that kids can digest it. It has to be locally relevant to your place-based reality. And what was the last piece? Angel, you added some really good ones there at the end. I think we figured out climate education for kids. Fantastic. Okay, well, another thread that I want to draw out that each of you spoke to there was sort of this immensity of climate change and I think the extent of the weight of working in this space. And you heard this from some of our other speakers earlier tonight. Of course, we know climate scientists estimate we need to cut global emissions by at least 50% by 2030, and that's only 9 at this point, almost 8 years away. And despite that mandate, we continue to watch emissions rise and rise around the world. So given that, it can be really emotionally draining to think about this reality day in and day out. We are just individuals, after all, trying to save a whole planet. So at the same time, and I'm sure others in the audience, I've seen a couple of comments in the chat to this effect, I'm just struck by how gracefully each of you have described dealing with this challenge of working in climate activism and holding on to this weight day to day. And I'm just so impressed by your energy and positivity. I think one of the chat comments said, hope is contagious, and it certainly is. So let's talk about this. How do you deal with the challenge, and how do you find ways to channel your energy into action and positive impact day to day? Isabel, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, so definitely acknowledging that to bring change, we're not alone in this. It has to come from everyone. So definitely getting off that weight off my shoulders. Something like, hey, like I can do my part, but everyone else also needs to do their part. And while that sometimes can make me feel like hopeless, like, oh, I wish not that everyone was doing the same as me, but at the same time, it can help, it inspires me to continue to do my part, because I feel like we're all part of this system, and if we all work together and do our part, then we will eventually be able to mitigate the climate crisis. So while that at the same time sometimes makes me hopeless, at the same time gives me energy to continue doing my part and live my life, bring my reusable cutlery everywhere, taking public transportation, and do the small steps. And yeah.
Awesome. Maya, can I pass it to you?
Yeah, so of course, I'd like to echo what Isabel said, just that you're not alone in this, that it's not just your fight, it's kind of on everyone. And so that takes some weight off your shoulders. And then I'd also just add that even if you're doing work that doesn't seem directly related to the climate crisis, like, for example, I do a lot of work supporting refugees and the climate, and there's going to be, of course, a lot more climate migrants coming up in the future because of weather and events and whatnot. And so just being able to support and understanding how to support those types of communities is still somewhat related to climate work. And so just because you're not doing something that seems directly related to supporting the climate, that doesn't mean that you're not still helping. I'm just remembering that.
Wonderful. Angel, how about you next?
Yeah, I think Maya hit on a really good point, which is just the interconnectedness of equity work. No matter what, if you're helping people in a ripple effect way. You're helping them, develop a better quality of life. And I think that even if it's not directly related to climate action, that's part of the work, because ultimately the goal of climate action is to save people and to ensure that longevity isn't something that we have to worry about, as a collective community worldwide. And so I think a lot of it has to do with understanding, that I'm not just like standing on the shoulders of giants, but I'm standing shoulder to shoulder with amazing like youth activists standing, in this panel virtually with these amazing people. And that makes me feel, again, less alone, but also makes me feel like I'm part of something larger, makes me feel hopeful about the solidarity of this movement. And I think like, even if I get frustrated, every day, I think that still shows that I'm not jaded, I'm not disillusioned, I'm willing to see the gap between what I want the future to look like in the present. And I think that also keeps me kind of motivated.
Hazel, that's a tough act to follow, but I'll let you bring this one home.
Well, I definitely agree with everyone in the fact that kind of acknowledging that as a human being, like just like, for example, I alone, I cannot solve the climate crisis on my own. And I think for me, that has really helped me embrace collaboration with so many like-minded people and organizations who are passionate about the same things that I'm doing. So we kind of just bring together all our goals, and we achieve something amazing. And then for me, it's actually just seeing the tiny steps that we're doing. So like, for example, as I was saying with climate operation, we're educating people about the climate crisis in Uganda. And then what makes me always happy is to find, for example, someone that we have educated actually also becoming a climate educator. So seeing such small things is actually what gives me a lot of hope for the future and keeps me going despite of the massive climate anxiety that's around us right now.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts on that topic. We all know climate activism requires an enormous amount of resiliency and hope. And I can see that in the work that each of you are doing and those small steps every day that start to add up and lead to real change. So we have just a few more questions before we move into Q&A with the audience. So reminder to everyone listening in, I've seen some great questions already, but please, if you have a burning question, pop it into the chat and we'll do our best to get to that in a minute. This last part is going to be a rapid fire round. So try to keep your answers just to a few words or a short sentence, and you can jump in and start if you have an answer. All right, first one, what new climate tech are you most excited about?
I'm pretty excited about the new innovations that are coming out with artificial intelligence and climate action and how that's actually going to revolutionize climate actions. New tech that I'm very excited about.
Who else?
I'm sorry. I'm excited about 3D printed housing. Just makes it so affordable housing and a sustainable housing, I think is really like on the horizon for a lot of people.
I'm looking forward to wave energy from our coast.
The expansion of kinetic pavement as an energy source.
That's a good one. What is one word you'd use to describe climate change?
I would start with, I would say compassion.
I would say current.
Angel, Hazel?
Oh, I'm sorry. I would say pandemic.
Yeah.
Transition.
A transition. That's good. I would say regenerate. No, intersection actually. Yeah, I would say it's very intersectional right now.
Very intersectional indeed. Those are great ones. Okay, name a youth activist aside from Greta Thunberg who we should be paying attention to.
I would like to highlight the Sunrise Movement. They're a youth advocacy group that was really active during the Biden campaign about climate work.
Who else?
I would say John Paul Jose. He does a lot of work centered on India and how the climate crisis is affecting that area.
Great. Hazel, Isabel?
I would say Vanessa Nakate, because she's finally kind of amplifying voices of young Africans, and not just in the global south, but Africans in general. So I'll definitely say her.
I would say Tara Benning, also known as a river warrior from Indonesia. I had the opportunity to meet her in a plastic pollution conference, and she just constructed a plastic museum made up of 10,000 plastic items. She's awesome. You should definitely look into her.
Awesome. I know that our audience would love for you each to post links to those folks' social media so other people can follow them and learn more from them. Our last question for tonight before audience Q&A, what are you most optimistic about in terms of the health of our planet? Just quickly, 1 or 2 words.
What I'm most optimistic about is the fact that as young people, we have finally decided to just take the reins and not rely on the older generation to do something. So that's something that it gives me hope for the future, that we have decided to just start doing something.
I would just say how much more like mainstream conversation around climate is becoming.
I would say proactivity as the new norm when it comes to climate action.
I would say that the most promising solutions are not a mystery, they're there, and that they're just a matter of will.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you all so much. those are such great answers, and I wish we had more time to dig in further. I think we're already a little bit over, but I'm going to turn to the audience Q&A quickly and see what we have from the audience. Here's a good one from Allison. She says, I want my kids to be climate activists, but they don't want to hear it from me. What would you recommend to parents who want to engage their kids to use their voice on climate? Any ideas? Have you talked to your parents about climate?
Just from like an education and getting them involved standpoint, just like tricking them basically. Like when my mom used to try to trick me into having spinach, she would just put it in smoothies and be like, it's good for you, it's tasty, there's no spinach in this. So for the climate crisis, applying that same logic and kind of saying, let's go build a city outside with blocks, and then getting water guns and like tearing it down basically. And then you can just like off the cuff relate it to like, oh, this is like extreme weather events, and just like slowly getting them engaged through like fun activities until they want to learn more about it on their own.
I love that. Those are great ideas. Any other quick thoughts on that? We'll try and fit in one or two more questions too.
Yeah, I completely agree. Of course, I would not have said tricking them, but yeah, basically just taking them out. Like, for example, if it's, let's say, school children, taking them out of the classroom and just indirectly engage them with something. Then let's say midway your activity. Like, for example, here we're doing an activity with children and we're basically coloring, but our activity was about the plastic in the seas. So midway our activity and everyone was having fun. Then suddenly we're like, do you know what happens when the fish follow that? It can embed it in the activities to have fun, but the person needs info.
Thanks, Hazel. Great. Allison, you've got a couple new ideas. You'll have to report back on how the trickery and the field trips go. And there are a couple good ones in the chat as well for you. Okay, I think we only have time for one more, so I'll turn it over to a question from Kat. In addition to this discussion, do you see the university curriculum bringing in sustainability management, business, and tech? And this is super relevant for each of you being in college currently. Where do you see this fitting into your curriculum?
I can speak from my university. One thing that I really was like floored by in a good way was that we have grants that students can apply for to actually create a sustainable project that the university will fund. And so I remember a couple of years ago, there was an environmental science senior who actually applied for it, and she got lawnmowers that were that eliminated like noise pollution from the active lawn mowing. And so she secured $10,000 to get those quiet lawnmowers because she noticed how it was affecting like the wildlife around our university. And so I thought that was amazing. And I thought, like, I hope that this is something that's normal around all college campuses, because allowing the university to be a facilitator and not always just the person at the forefront, and letting students take the reins for that and to create tangible change that's being funded, I thought was really amazing.
Love that idea. That's fantastic. Anyone else on university curriculum ideas?
I can't really speak to curriculum because I'm actually not in college yet, but all of my work has been through UC San Diego. So from a more administrative organizational side of things, especially like just the center I work with has a lot of focus on climate. And then there's like composting programs that are through the university that become student run. There's community gardens that the university really encourages and makes space for. Even just they have compost finally. They're working with their food, housing and dining administration to compost like a lot of the excess food. So I think there's a lot of change happening.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I think we could have spent all night going through these questions and engaging with our audience. You all have terrific ideas about the decade ahead. So Hazel, Isabel, Maya, and Angel, thank you once again for sharing your inspirational stories of climate activism, for shedding light on all of the ways that we need to amplify the youth voice and really come together collaboratively to make progress on climate. Your words have given me, and I think the audience too, tremendous energy to keep up this important work. You are the next decade of action, and I can't wait to see where each of your paths lead. So with that, we have now wrapped up the Youth Climate Panel. Thank you once again, everyone, for staying on tonight with us. We have lots more in store, so it's now my pleasure to hand it over to Glenna to lead our next session. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Ellie, and thank you for your amazing work bringing that panel together. I'm just touched to the bone here, touched to the heart with everything that you brought to this session. And my name is Glenna Wiseman. I work in the clean energy sector, and I want to invite you to stay. I know it's late or really early in some parts of the world, so please stay and help us with this next session. We have talked about as a team what we could do, bringing all of the voices together so that everyone had a chance to really activate the next decade of climate change through the lens of women in clean tech. And so we are sitting in this potent moment. We have this opportunity to chime in all together. And I really just welcome you to do so. What we're going to do here today is something that a lot of thought and structure has gone into to give you the opportunity to add your voice to what we're doing here with Women in Clean Tech for the next decade. So we're going to break into smaller groups. We're going to have a facilitator in each one of those groups. We're going to have a digital whiteboard that we're going to work from, which is going to be really great. And we're going to ask you questions about 4 key areas. And each group will have an opportunity to answer each of the questions. And then we'll take that and we're going to work from the positive. All night we've been focusing on the positive. We all know the negative. We all know if we don't take this next decade seriously and reverse course on the destructive behaviors that we have been doing, that the outcome will not be what we want. So today we're going to focus on the positive. And so what I would like us to do as we lead into these sessions is just take a deep breath. Just take a moment to center ourselves, connect our heads and our hearts into this current moment. Maybe we could bring down the slides. We could take a minute to go to gallery view and see everybody that's here with you. Just flip through for a minute and just connect with everybody in a moment of positive energy, because we are all here together and we are not doing this alone. And so I just welcome you all to join in with us with this next session and see that we're not doing it alone, see that we're all doing it together, and take a moment to actually provide a foundation to build on the last 10 years of amazing work that Women in Clean Tech has done, so that your voice and your thoughts and your ideas are part of the next 10 years. So if someone could tell me if you're ready to go to the breakout rooms.
We are.
You are ready. See, I knew if we kept it short this part. So take a deep breath, center yourself in this moment. We are activating, we are telling the universe what we want to see, as Lisa Ann was saying. We are telling the universe what we want to see. So we're gonna do positive ideas in 4 different quadrants. So enjoy.
We are coming back.
Ooh, WCS job fair. I like that idea.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. As you come back in, we're going to do a couple of quick high-level shares. And I would like to start with Oakley. I hope Oakley is in the house. She's been just an amazing powerhouse to get this thing together with Miss Kim. So Oakley, what happened in your group?
Hi. Well, I had a great quote, and she can reveal herself if she can, but one of the industries we're concerned about is food, because you can't eat software. So we definitely we want tech to advance, but we're very concerned about food because we have to be able to feed ourselves. So regenerative farming and those types of topics came up. And also starting local chapters across the US, which is a very cool idea as well.
Excellent, thank you so much. And Sapna, my co-chair, are you still here? with us tonight?
Hi, yes, I'm here. Hi, Glenna.
Awesome, holding down the East Coast. What happened in your group?
Yes, well, Abby, Shelton, and I, just two of us in our breakout room, which was really nice. And so a couple of things that came up, and Abby, feel free to jump in. We talked about kind of in terms of WCS's next, phase, just really hyper-local, in-person, casual meetups where we can really build those connections with people in our local area that are in the same space. And especially after COVID, kind of really getting those in-person connections going again will be really nice. So we talked about that. We also talked about industries that, we really want to focus on in terms of climate action in the future, large industrial industries like cement and steel, and a lot of kind of similar type of agriculture and things like that, where larger impact can be made in the future. So those are kind of the topics that came up for us.
Excellent. Well, we have a whole other half of that mural that we need to fill out, ladies and gentlemen. So are we ready to go back into our networking groups?
Let's do it. If you have any trouble,
all right,
get back
so
to
let's
us.
fill out the ideas on the other half of the mural. Excellent. Thank you so much. Welcome back. Welcome back. And everyone, while we're doing our final couple of group shares, smile. Make sure your camera's on so we can get some great group photos. Look your best, as you always do, even this late at night or early in the morning, depending on where you are. Okay, do we have Miss Emily in the room? Miss Emily, are you in the room?
I am in the room, yes.
Excellent. So I want you all to know that Miss Emily put this mural thing together. So please share and tell us what happened in your group.
This was a fantastic group, and I want to say to everyone, it was so inspiring seeing all the cursors, ideas, sticky notes coming together, and my group was really, really fantastic here. One idea I want to highlight was actually the gratefulness for WCS for bringing a network together, and also an idea of connecting, like linking together other groups as well that are doing such amazing work in climate tech, and even elevating our networks through that. I thought it was a fantastic idea and thought an out of the box thinking. And in that career session and challenges, always like the envisioning. We need to be able to envision who's a female leader up there to even able to think of how to develop our careers. And someone quoted as well, just saying it because shout out to Lisa, and speak it into existence. That as my final thought from our group. It was such a fantastic kind of collection of ideas of where we want the next decade to go.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Miss Kerpa. Miss Kerpa, ladies and gentlemen, was the volunteer coordinator lead person here. So what happened in your group, Kerpa?
Oh, so many exciting things. I actually had the pleasure of Lisa Ann popping into our lovely, Ideathon mural brainstorming group. And we had a lot of great, I don't even know if great's the right word, but everyone was just sort of putting their ideas together, and we kept seeing other ideas pop up and wanted to have more thumbs up that were generated. But overall, I think that, within this session, the breakout session 2, careers in clean tech, we wanted to see more resources available to women. One of the things that Lisa Ann brought up was how to ask for a promotion. I saw that there was mitigation out there. We had leadership training. We had more collaboration between industry sectors. I think it was more heavily resource training and being able to understand how you can be a leader in this field, which is very important. In the second part, in the last everything else, we had a very, very lively discussion amongst our group. The last thing that was actually suggested was from Robin, and she had suggested a WCS advisor network, influential women in clean tech and sustainability, being able to be a resource to people within the community to, collaborate with them, to bounce bounce ideas off of them. Another one was covering Indigenous stories, which I really, really liked. And I hope that we can highlight that more within our community. And, you know, there's so many great things that are out here. I'm just so excited to see everyone's thoughts posted on this mural. And I can't wait to see what we do with it.
Okay, I'm going to sneak one more in here. Jake, are you still with us? Come on down.
Yeah.
Tell us what happened in your group. Good.
Yeah, I was sharing the group with Emily, so it was cool. She kind of drove the car. I was riding shotgun. So we kind of already heard some of the highlights. But I think one thing that came up in both of my groups was like folks in this call who are budding entrepreneurs or early entrepreneurs, and really valuing all the resources that WCS can bring to them as they kind of take that leap of faith to not just be a part of the wheel, but to be the cog. And so that's inspiring. And, you know, I really just would be excited to see all the new ways that WCS is going to support all these entrepreneurs as they change the world.
Thank you so much for that. If an idea that you had in the last 5 minutes or last 5 seconds didn't make it onto the mural, please put it in the chat. Please just, you know, download that idea. Make sure that we get them all, because they're all important to us and your voice is important to us. And reach out to us and let us know. Please, someone on the volunteer team, put your contact information if someone wants to be a volunteer. Maybe Kirpa as the lead there, you could let people know how to get a hold of you. I know this will come up in a minute. And you know what, I'm touched to the heart and soul with this evening, and my heart has hope because of this evening and because of all of your brilliance. So I just thank you, and I thank Lisa Ann and her visionary wanting to have friends in clean tech that were women. Hurrah, 10 years later. You just never know how your idea is going to blossom. You just never know. So I am going to pass the baton back over to Miss Sarah, our co-chairwoman, head person that keeps us going along here with Lisa Ann. And Sarah, take it away.
Well, we just had such an amazing night. My Lisa and I cheeks are hurting from laughing and smiling so much with so much joy. This has been an amazing night. Thank you again for hanging in there with us. Let's go to the next slide, please. So we have some upcoming events. We're in closing right now. So we want to close out the year with some amazing upcoming virtual events. And we do have a lot of volunteer opportunities, which we shared. So please make those connections. Reach out to Kirpa. Here's the contact information. Next slide, please. We had mentioned a little bit about our mentorship program, and applications are now open. We had the privilege today of hearing from the co-chair, Eleanor and Ellie. And so please reach out to careerdev@womencleantechandsustainability.org if you were interested in this program. Next slide, please. I'm sure my good friend Kelly Rachinsky's on the call here. I want to put a quick plug in there. Are you there, girlfriend?
You know it.
Hey, so I just want to give you a quick second to make any announcement around this, announcing a refer a friend for the membership. I know the membership committee has worked really diligently in getting this program, and we wanted to just give you a quick second to share with us a little bit about this program.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I appreciate that. And for everyone out there that's been asking, we finally did it. We built a refer a friend option. So any of you out there who are already volunteers or already members, take that QR code. You've got this referral code that's there. Take a screenshot here today, connect with us. It's on our website. And you get a discount for your friend who arrives. New members get $10 off. So thank you so much for the word, Sarah. That was very kind.
We're excited about this new program. This is how we're going to grow our network and get your companies involved and your friends involved. So please bring them. Let's get to the next slide, please. Well, as many of you know, we are a nonprofit organization and we are 100% volunteer ran. And this is something what I like to say is a labor of love. And this is a team effort here. So what you've seen tonight is based on all the people that are on this list of all their hard work. And I just have to give a big shout out to this team of volunteers. There's those people that you've seen today that are behind, you may not have seen them, but they're behind the scenes. And we've had countless meetings to pull off this event. So I just want to thank you to all of our volunteers for your time, for your energy, and for just believing in the cause. And something, you know, I really just love what Don said today, which is that loyalty to the purpose. So thank you for the loyalty to the purpose. And I'm excited to see what these next 10 years are going to be and what ideas we pull out of this hat. I can't wait to see which ones those are. Next slide. Now, please, if you took any pictures, share them on Instagram. We will be sharing the YouTube video of this event. So please, our coordinators will send it to you. If you're currently not a member of our newsletter, please sign up for our newsletter. And if you are on LinkedIn, please connect with all of the board members and our Facebook page and our LinkedIn page. You will see a lot of current information there about what we're doing in our community, what programs we have going on next. We are looking for ideas to make our community bigger. So please just continue to reach out to us. We just thank you again for an amazing event. Shout out to the WCS board. Shout out to Lisa Ann. Thank you to all of our volunteers. And in closing, we do have some music. I think that's our next slide. Oh, how can I forget this amazing group of partners that we've been able to work with as not only our corporate members, but as well as cross-promotion partners and partner organizations that we're looking to continue to connect with educational. So if you have any connections in the universities, we definitely want to be able to support women and get them into this industry and teach them a little bit about job opportunities. So please connect with us. We want to give a big shout out to all of our sponsors. Thank you to Microsoft, Snowball Printing, and all of our cross-promotion partners. Thank you again. Next slide. And I believe this is the music entertainment portion.
Thank you, everyone.
Hey, y'all. Thank you so much for having us. My name is Katrina. This is Corinne Lee, and we are going to be doing our own version of my song, Wedding Season. No +1 on the invite. I'm next to some random guy. My ex is sitting to my right. It's gonna be a long night. Dressed in all black, everything. Strapless, showing off my yank. The only girl without a ring. But damn what anybody thinks. Drink all the champagne. Shots with the DJ. Dancing till my feet are sore. The last one to leave the floor. I feel like some sort of cliche. Like nobody else my age. Everyone's got something to Yes, I'm alone, some may say, but what does that mean anyway? I have got more joy than most, not perfect, but pretty close. I still feel like I am young. I am having the most fun. Life is good, but number one, I don't answer to anyone. I'm not the one to worry about. Nobody has it all figured out, but I do. I do whatever I want to. I do.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Look forward to seeing you for the next 10 years.
Do this.
More than 10 years.
Right. 100 years. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Sarah.
Bye, everyone.
Great job.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Great job.
Thank you all. Thank you so